Good morning, students. So, in your previous lesson, we read about the chapter The Best Christmas Present in the World by Michael Morpurgo. And I'm sure you must have gone through the PPT that I had provided. Um, and I'm hoping that all of you have done your assignment and have read the chapter. Now, students, after reading the story and analyzing it, um, in the assignment only, I had told you people to read the story in a way that you get the central theme of the chapter or the focal point. So, after reading the story, the title itself, tells us a lot of things that are present in the chapter. The title is The Best Christmas Present in the World. Okay. So, Christmas, as we all know, is a festival that is celebrated throughout the world in different countries, and it basically signifies the merrymaking, the festivity, and that whole spirit of celebration, being with your loved ones, exchanging gifts, having good food, and all the happy things that are there. And now the Christmas present. Now, the Christmas present that we are talking about in the chapter is the present that Connie Macpherson gets from the author of the story, whom she mistakes to be her husband, that is Jim Macpherson. Now, today's lesson is going to be based on the theme that after reading and analyzing the chapter critically, I'm sure you all must have gotten an idea of, but we'll still um, do a kind of, brush through. Now, what is actually a theme or the central message of a story? It is something that the author wants you to learn or know from the story, but doesn't give it to you right away directly. Okay, so we need to, as I always tell you in the classes also, when we used to read and do our literature chapters, I always used to tell you to read between the lines. Okay, so it is the message that the author has hidden for you between the lines, and he doesn't give it to you directly. Okay, it is usually not stated and must be inferred by the readers. Now, as you all know, the basic setting of our story, the basic events that are going on are: first, Connie Macpherson, the way she keeps on waiting for her husband to return from the war. Then, the background of the First World War, which happened in reference to this story, between the Britain and Germans, between the British people and the Germans, and the way that Jim Macpherson and the enemies, the Germans, were in the battleground, but to everyone's surprise, even to our surprise, as readers, in the letter we get to know that both the enemies were not fighting. Instead, on the day of Christmas, the enemies, they initiated um, this whole kind of festive atmosphere was created, and there was a match of football and whatnot, and all of them talked, they sang, they drank, they ate, and they celebrated Christmas in their own way, which is, I think, the major attraction of the whole story, um, and which is actually the part of the story which gives us the theme, the central idea of our story. Now, Christmas, a festival marked by family reunion, exchange of presents, and universal bonhomie. Connie, aged 101 years, receives a present from a stranger whom she mistakes for her long awaited husband. And we know who the stranger is. This is the author of the chapter. She announces this present to be the best Christmas present. Now, students, here only there is a catch. Okay, now the best Christmas present. When the author reaches Connie and hands over that tin box to her, along with a letter by Jim Macpherson, it is on us to now see if Connie calls the letter the best Christmas present, or the stranger whom she mistakes to be her husband the best Christmas present. And we know that it is the return of the husband that she announces to be the best Christmas present, which is actually not the case, because it is a stranger and not her husband, but because she's that old, and this could also be, that kind of trauma and the long wait that she had to, the pain that she had to endure all these years, just waiting for her husband to be back from the war. Because of that, she mistakes the stranger to be her husband, and then she announces that this is the best Christmas present that she ever had gotten. Though the irony is that Christmas, which is marked with festivities, family, and friends, otherwise in a perfect world, here, see, now whenever we say Christmas, what comes to our mind? It's a festival. Like in our country, the most widely celebrated festival is Diwali. So whenever that comes to your mind, what do you, think of? What comes to your mind? It's the diyas, lights, candles, festivities, sweets, family members meeting, having a good time. The same way, Christmas also brings the same similar kind of images to our mind, but the irony of the very title of our chapter, the irony of the whole situation is that the that Christmas has been depicted in the story in actually a battleground. Okay, the festivities are actually pictured in a battleground where the two enemies who are there, according to their masters, according to the two countries, they were there to fight each other, to kill each other, but what happens in fact is that they come together and they start celebrating the festival in their own way, in whatever whatever minimal resources they had there, they celebrated it. Okay, because again we'll come to the message that we get from this particular episode, but if we compare the in a perfect world, ideally how Christmas would be to how it is depicted in the chapter, we'll see how ironic it is that Christmas has been pictured, has been, set in a battleground here, the Christmas celebrations. Okay. Also, the Christmas present that Connie gets is actually not a present. I mean, she mistakes the present she mistakes the author to be her best Christmas present or to be her husband, whom she has been waiting for a long period of time. So now, these are the basic things and the major points that we have to keep in mind while thinking of the lesson learned or the theme of the chapter. Now, of course, we all know that it is a war story against the backdrop of Christmas, and it shows us the importance of three things. Now, if we see, majorly three things have been shown to be the center of the life of any human in that sense. First is family, second is peace, and third is love. These, especially peace and love, it has been shown in the chapter, in the story itself, that peace and love are those two things that we as humans, any human, be it in any country, we essentially want. We long for it. We want peace and love. Nobody wants stress. We leave aside war. War is the most intense of the situations, but we don't want the smallest of stressful events in our life. Okay, we all want to be happy. We want peace to prevail. Okay, even if we can connect it to the present scenario, we all are inside our homes and we know that is happening for our own and others safety as well, for us as a society at large. The whole world is coming together. We are all staying indoors just to just to ensure that everyone is safe. But even when we don't have to go and fight for a war, what are we wanting? What do we internally wishing? What are we wishing for? That Okay, so students, I was saying that even when we don't have to go for a to fight a war right now, but still this is also in a way a battle that we all are fighting for the world's um, betterment. We still somewhere deep down we still get these thoughts that we wish this gets over as soon as possible. There's we are able to meet our family and friends. We are able to lead our normal lives again. So just imagine that right now we literally don't have to do anything but to sit at home, nothing is to be done. Still, we are finding it so difficult to deal with. So, imagine the plight of the soldiers who are actually there in the battlefield, not knowing which second, they'll lose their lives. And they might not get another chance to see and meet their families. Okay, so that is what has been told to us in the whole story, that family, peace, and love are the three most important things in any human's life. Now, moving on to the. Okay. Okay. Now here, I've just taken out a few points. As I always tell you people to follow the PE format. These are the evidences where we see from in the chapter itself where love has been shown. We see the indestructible. First of all, the bond of love between Connie McPherson and her husband Jim McPherson, which is very very evident because she waits for so long for her husband to be back. And even when she's 101 years old, she's still in sitting there in the nursing home in the same hope that she'll get to see her husband. And that is the reason why the moment she sees the author, who is just a stranger for her, she mistakes him to be her husband. That is the kind of love that she holds. Okay, both of them hold for each other. The way Jim actually writes that letter to her, explaining everything. How he wants her to know. Um, the ongoings of the battleground and the reason why he writes that letter to her, all of this is a all these are the tokens of love that we see in the story, the conversations, and not just love in that sense of Connie and Jim, the husband and the wife, but even when the two enemies, the Tommies and the Fritz, are actually there to celebrate Christmas. You see them talking about all the good things about what even Jim McPherson and Hans Wolf, they exchange a few ideas about what their favorite books are, and Hans Wolf talks about the place where Jim lives, and Jim asks him about his family, about how many kids he has. All these things, they just want to actually exchange love and that feeling of family, because there, for that one day when they're actually celebrating Christmas, they don't have their actual families. And at such difficult times, the enemies themselves, they become each other's families in a way, if we see, because they are actually discussing the things that we would discuss with family members. They're sharing food, and singing and merrymaking is going on. So in that way, love and brotherhood is being spread. Now the third evidence is the merrymaking on Christmas amidst the war on no man's land. That itself is the greatest example of spreading love. Coming to the next one, which is peace. As we all know, this very incident where we see that the armies on both the sides decide not to kill each other on that very day. Instead, they wanted to have a football match, and then they sit and they talk and do all these things. That itself tells that they do not want war. Even the fact that Hans Wolf tells Jim McPherson that I think after the once the football match has started, he tells Jim McPherson that I think that sports is a better way to resolve conflicts, as there are no deaths, no children are orphaned, and no women are widowed. So, as soldiers, because we know they are also human beings at the end of the day, it is the leaders who are making these innocent souls fight with each other and kill each other. They, although don't want to do that, they value not just their family but each other's families as well, because the way in which Jim McPherson mentions about Hans Wolf's wife and him having a son who's just 6 months old, all of that shows that they don't differentiate between each other on those grounds. Family is family, love is important, peace is important to all of them, all alike. Okay. Although the Germans and British were enemies, hence they were at the war, the soldiers on both the sides did not want the war, which tells us that humankind essentially yearns for peace, love, and harmony instead of killings, bloodshed, mayhem, and war. Now, talking about family, as I've already discussed with you people, the importance of family is has been shown to us at different points. Jim, when he discusses about Hans Wolf's family, then all the soldiers in the battleground, they waited to be back with their families. They were discussing, that we just hope that this gets over soon and we are all able to be with our families once again. And the way Connie, who waited for 101 long years for her husband, who's family to her, to be back, and she is so clouded with this, emotion that one day she'll be able to see her husband, he'll come back after all these years also. That is the reason why she actually mistakes the author to be her husband. Now, the key points that we have to keep in mind are the story at a larger, in a larger image. If you see, the story depicts brotherhood and universal bonhomie. Bonhomie is celebration, love, the feeling of love, and celebration. Soldiers in the enemy camps they also want peace and harmony. Nobody wants killings and atrocities to happen. Okay. The discord of the leaders develops no enmity among them. They wish to celebrate and play together, even though the leaders want them to fight and kill each other. No one wants war to happen. Even the soldiers who are there in the battlefield, whose only aim is to fight each other, they also actually do not want war. Okay. As I mean, the whole human race as one entity, we none of us wants war. We would, who wouldn't want to save lives? If there can be a substitute, an alternative for these wars, we could, find other ways of resolving conflicts. Then what better than that? That would save so many lives. Um, One should try to find out other sources and solutions to solve differences between two nations instead of wars. Now, here in the chapter, although we read the story about the war that was happening between two nations, but even in our day to day life, children, we all have conflicts at different levels with our friends, with, even in the family, with our siblings and all. But we don't have to fight every time. We can actually find other ways of resolving our conflicts, maybe by discussing with them, maybe by talking about it, maybe by sharing how we feel about a particular thing, maybe by asking each other if they have been hurt because of any of our action, our words, and all those things. So there are multiple ways in which we can resolve conflicts instead of just fighting with each other. War brings death and sadness. There are much better ways of resolving differences at each and every level. Now, here's a food for thought for you all. You just have to think about it, read, and then think. Okay, two friends went to see a movie. This is a situation for you people. Two friends, one day they go to watch a movie. It was based on what? The movie was, based on war. I'm sure all of you must have watched one or the other movie which was based on war. They saw killing, bloodshed, crying, etc. They felt shaken to see the aftermath of the war. Aftermath means whatever happened after the war was over. Okay, the result of the war. They came out of the cinema with a heavy heart. Okay, with a lot of sorrow, with a lot of burden in their hearts, a pain, a sense of pain. When they came back home, they were restless. Next day, they talked about this restlessness that they were feeling to their teacher, and they wanted to know why people fight with each other when we can resolve every matter with peace and calm. So these two children, they go and watch a movie which was based on war, and you all know what happens in a war. And as I said, you all must have watched a movie which was based on war. It I'm sure it doesn't bring any kind of pleasant emotions or feelings to anyone's heart. It might interest a lot of people, such movies, but they never give you a pleasant, that's, it is never a pleasant experience for any one of us. um, I think the latest one, the movie Uri, if any one of you have watched that, although it was a good thing that happened from our countryside, but still, once you watch such movies, you do feel that heaviness in your heart. Okay, so these two children also are feeling the same way, and they come out of the theater, they're feeling all restless, and the next day they go and discuss the same with their teacher. Now, their question is that why, what is the need to fight with each other when we can actually resolve every matter, every possible thing? Remember, in this world, children can be solved with peace and calm if we just give ourselves some time to think and don't react. We don't become impulsive, we don't react immediately. I can guarantee this to you, that you can find the solution to every problem that you face, to every conflict that you have with any person on this earth. You can find a solution to it with peace and calm. You don't need to fight. Okay, now the questions that you have to ask yourself are: why were the two friends restless? I have, in a way, I've discussed that, but still, this has to be your own point of view. I don't want to color your opinion in any, sorry, in any way. And the second point that you have to ponder upon is, in your day to day life, you must have also had, conflicts with your friends or your siblings. What, according to you, are some other ways to resolve conflict? Of course, we are not keeping in mind the fighting um, option. Okay, so what, according to you, are the other ways of resolving conflicts? I need to know that, and you're going to think over it and answer. So here we come to the end of the lesson, students. I hope you must have enjoyed the lesson, and I'm hoping that you will go through the through the literature of Michael Morpurgo, other books also, which I had mentioned in the previous PowerPoint presentation that I had uploaded. And I would encourage you people to read some of his other books as well, and share what you felt, what what your reading experience was with me. Thank you, students.